All right, so are you ready to kind of flip the script on Thanksgiving a little bit?
I think so.
Because we got some articles sent in by listeners about, Thanksgiving history and stuff.
Uh-huh.
And one in particular, how the Irish saved Thanksgiving. I mean, that right there caught our attention,
Yeah.
because, it claims that the Pilgrims basically might not have made it without help from, Dublin.
It's a pretty big claim.
I know, right?
Thanksgiving for most people is that classic image of the autumn feast 1621.
Right, right.
But this article, it kind of throws a curveball into that whole story.
Yeah.
It points to something that happened way earlier, like February 1621,
Oh, really?
as the real first Thanksgiving.
Okay, wait, so we're talking like Valentine's Day Thanksgiving here? What's going on?
Not quite, but it's a good image.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
so think about it. The Pilgrims, right? They've just barely survived this brutal winter.
Oh, yeah.
They're running out of food and supplies. Like
Yeah.
they're on the verge of starving.
Oh, wow.
And then suddenly a ship shows up,
Yeah.
packed with all the things they desperately need,
Okay.
basically saves the colony.
Wow. Okay.
And that, according to this article, is what they were really giving thanks for at that first Thanksgiving.
A rescue mission Thanksgiving. I'm liking this already. Okay, so where'd the ship come from?
That's the interesting part. So this article, it talks about these old Boston Post columns from like way back in the 1920s and 30s.
Uh-huh.
They were written by this mysterious figure called like Observant Citizen.
Okay.
And apparently this person uncovered historical records that say that this ship called the Lion, it set sail from Dublin.
Dublin.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Chartered by the father-in-law of one of the Pilgrim leaders, no less.
Hold on, the Pilgrims had a connection to Dublin.
Right.
Like, why didn't they teach us this in school?
It kind of changes everything we thought we knew, right?
Yeah, totally.
But here's where it gets even more interesting. Those Boston Post articles, they never actually come out and say the ship was Irish.
Oh, Rich.
Yeah. And so at the time, some Irish organizations, they were like, hey, wait a minute. Are they trying to downplay our role here?
Yeah.
Maybe because of all the anti-Irish sentiment that was going around back then.
So you're saying this observant citizen was maybe trying to hide the Irish connection?
It's possible, but it's complicated because even though this colonist didn't specifically label the ship as Irish, the records they were talking about, they actually exist.
They do.
Yeah, the Massachusetts Historical Society, they have documentation that backs it all up.
Right.
The Irish connection, the arrival of the Lion, it's all there.
So this Irish saved Thanksgiving story, it's not just some made-up thing.
It seems like there's some real historical truth to it.
Wow, this is already making me rethink everything I thought I knew about Thanksgiving. But wait, there's another article too, right?
Yeah. Yes. Thanksgiving Irish Connection.
Yeah.
And it offers a slightly different perspective.
Okay.
It acknowledges that, the holiday itself isn't like an Irish invention or anything.
Right.
But it shines a light on the huge role that Irish immigrants played in shaping how Thanksgiving is celebrated here in America, especially in the 1800s.
So how did they influence Thanksgiving? I mean, we're talking mashed potatoes, stuffing. Those aren't exactly Irish staples, are they?
You're right, those dishes came from somewhere else. But what this article focuses on is the spirit of Thanksgiving. The gratitude, the generosity, the focus on community, all of that resonated deeply with the Irish, especially those who came over after the potato famine.
Yeah, I can see that, arriving in a new country after going through something so awful
Yeah,
and then finding comfort in a holiday all about resilience and giving thanks.
exactly. And this article suggests that their emphasis on charity and sharing really influenced how Americans celebrated Thanksgiving,
Makes sense.
especially when it came to taking care of people less fortunate.
So even if they didn't invent Thanksgiving, they definitely helped shape it into the holiday we know and love today.
Yeah, exactly. It's like they added a whole new layer of meaning to it.
Yeah, it's like they helped define what Thanksgiving is all about.
It's a good reminder that traditions, they're always evolving, shaped by the people who carry them forward, their experiences, their values.
That's a great point. And it makes you realize that even a holiday as simple as Thanksgiving, it has this surprisingly complex history.
It really does.
Okay, so we've got this possible first Thanksgiving celebrating an Irish rescue mission. And then we have the story of Irish immigrants influencing the very heart of the holiday.
Yeah.
It's like two pieces of a puzzle fitting together. But where do those ancient Irish harvest festivals fit in? The ones you mentioned, like Samhain and Lughnasadh.
Oh, yeah. Both articles, they actually
Oh.
touch on those ancient celebrations.
Really?
And it's fascinating because those festivals, they go back centuries before the Pilgrims ever set foot here.
Wow.
But they have that same spirit of gratitude for the harvest,
Mm-hmm.
this recognition of the cycle of life and death.
Yeah. So even though the Irish didn't invent Thanksgiving, they had their own harvest traditions that share some common themes with it.
Exactly. It speaks to this universal human impulse to give thanks for what the earth provides.
Yeah, it's like no matter where you come from, we all share this need to connect with nature, appreciate its abundance, celebrate the harvest.
It's a shared human experience.
You know, I started this deep dive thinking this Irish Saved Thanksgiving story was a pretty bold claim.
Yeah.
But the more we dig into it, the more I'm seeing all these fascinating connections and nuances.
And we've only just scratched the surface.
Oh, really?
There's still so much to unpack. Like, why did that observant citizen leave out the Irish connection in those Boston Post articles?
Yeah, that's a good point.
What does that tell us about how history is written and remembered?
And what about those historical records themselves?
Yeah.
What can they tell us about this rescue mission Thanksgiving?
Well, to answer those questions, we need to dive into the specifics of the evidence. You know, things like ship manifests, letters, diary entries.
All right, let's do it.
Okay. Yeah, these primary sources, they give us these little glimpses into what life was really like back in Plymouth Colony.
Yeah.
And they paint this picture of, hardship and scarcity,
Right?
which makes the arrival of the lion even more significant.
So what kind of details do these records actually reveal? I mean, was there really a Thanksgiving feast to celebrate the ship's arrival?
Well, there isn't like a detailed account of a formal feast happening in February 1621.
Uh-huh.
But the records do confirm that the Lion sailed in from Dublin loaded with essential provisions like food tools, seeds, you name it.
Wow. I mean, can you imagine the relief those settlers must have felt?
Oh, absolutely. It must have seemed like a miracle.
Yeah, totally.
Mm.
But I'm kind of curious about this observant citizen character. You know, the one who wrote those Boston Post columns?
Yeah.
They sound like a serious historian. Do we know anything about them, like their background or why they were so interested in this?
That's part of the mystery. Their real identity is still unknown, which just makes this whole story even more intriguing.
I know, right?
Some historians think they might have been connected to the Massachusetts Historical Society somehow
Oh, why?
because they had access to all these records.
That makes sense. It's like a historical detective story.
It really is.
We've got this anonymous columnist, a hidden Irish connection, and these tantalizing glimpses into the past.
Uh-huh.
What does it all mean for how we understand Thanksgiving?
Well, it definitely makes us rethink the traditional narrative. Thanksgiving as we know it.
Yeah.
It's often presented as this purely American story.
Right.
But what we're seeing here is something much more complex, a much more interconnected history.
Yeah, for sure.
It highlights how global forces were at play, even in the founding of Plymouth Colony.
Uh-huh.
And it underscores the contributions of those who don't always get the recognition they deserve.
Like those early Irish settlers. It's like we're uncovering this lost chapter in the Thanksgiving story.
It really is.
And this connection to Ireland, especially during a time of so much anti-Irish sentiment,
Yeah.
it makes you wonder what other stories might be hidden in the margins of history.
It's a powerful reminder that history is often told from a specific perspective.
Right.
And it's so important to consider the voices that might have been silenced or ignored.
Absolutely.
In this case, recognizing the Irish role, it not only adds to our understanding of Thanksgiving,
Yeah.
but it also sheds light on the broader immigrant experience in America.
It's incredible to think that all these seemingly separate threads, an early Plymouth settlement, an anonymous columnist, ancient Irish harvest traditions,
Yeah.
they're all woven together in this Thanksgiving tapestry.
It's a testament to how interconnected history and culture really are.
Yeah.
It's not a neat little linear story. It's
Yeah.
more like a web of relationships and influences that continue to shape our world today.
So what can we take away from all of this as we head into Thanksgiving? Besides the fact that I need to brush up on my Irish history, of course.
Well, I think it encourages us to approach the holiday with a sense of curiosity and an open mind.
Okay.
Beyond the traditional story of pilgrims and turkeys, there are so many layers of meaning,
Yeah.
untold stories just waiting to be discovered.
Like the story of those Irish immigrants who embraced the spirit of Thanksgiving and helped shape its traditions here.
Exactly.
It makes me think about all the different cultures that have contributed to the richness and diversity of the holiday we celebrate today.
It's a good reminder that Thanksgiving isn't just about the past.
Right.
It's also about the present
Yeah.
and how we choose to carry these traditions forward,
Yeah.
incorporating our own experiences, our own values.
You know, we may never know exactly what happened at that very first Thanksgiving back in February 1621
Yeah.
or the full extent of the Irish contribution,
Sure.
but this deep dive has definitely opened my eyes to a whole new perspective.
And hopefully it will inspire our listeners to do the same,
Yeah.
to maybe dig a little deeper into their own family histories.
Uh.
Explore those unexpected connections that might be waiting to be uncovered.
I love that it's like we're giving our listeners a little Thanksgiving homework assignment.
I like that.
Embrace that spirit of exploration and uncover the hidden stories within their own families and communities.
And as they gather with loved ones to share a meal and give thanks,
Yeah.
maybe they'll be inspired to ask questions,
Uh-huh.
share stories, acknowledge all the different threads that have woven together the tapestry of their own lives.
Beautifully said. And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this fascinating deep dive.
Okay, but before we do, let's leave our listeners with one final thought to ponder.
All right, lay it on us. What's this final thought?
Well, as you're sitting around your Thanksgiving table this year, I want you to think about, what does Thanksgiving actually mean to you? How has your understanding of the holiday maybe changed over time?
That's a great question. I think for a lot of people, Thanksgiving, it brings up those classic images, pilgrims, turkeys, cornucopias, the whole 9 yards. But as we've seen in this deep dive, there's so much more to it than that.
Absolutely. And for some people, Thanksgiving has a much deeper, more personal meaning,
Yeah.
Maybe it's a time to reflect on their family's journey to America, or to honor the traditions that have been passed down for generations,
Right.
or even just to acknowledge the complex history of the land itself where they're gathering.
I think that's such an important point. Thanksgiving can mean different things to different people.
Exactly.
It's not a one-size-fits-all kind of holiday.
Right. And as our world becomes more diverse, more interconnected,
Uh-huh.
it's even more important to embrace those different perspectives,
Yeah.
and find that common ground and the values that Thanksgiving represents.
Like what?
Gratitude, generosity, a sense of community.
Yeah, totally. For some people, Thanksgiving might be a time to connect with their heritage.
Right.
Share those family stories, those recipes that have been passed down.
Uh-huh.
For others, it might be a chance to give back to their community.
Yeah.
Volunteer at a food bank, just lend a helping hand to someone in need.
And that's the beauty of Thanksgiving. I think,
Yeah.
it can hold so many different meanings and traditions, but it still brings people together
Right.
around this shared feeling of gratitude and connection.
This whole deep dive has been such a great reminder
Yeah.
that even the holidays we think we know so well, they have hidden depths and untold stories.
Yeah.
And by exploring their stories, we gain a much richer understanding of the history and the culture that have shaped us.
I agree. So as you're enjoying your Thanksgiving meal this year, take a moment to think about the journey that brought that food to your table.
Okay.
Think about the farmers, the workers, the generations of traditions that have all played a part in this day.
Wow.
And hey, maybe even raise a glass to those early settlers
Yeah.
and all the unexpected twists and turns that helped create this holiday we love so much.
Cheers to that.
Cheers.
And to all of you listening out there, we hope you have a wonderful Thanksgiving filled with delicious food, meaningful connections,
Yeah.
and maybe even a little bit of historical reflection.
And remember, keep diving deep.
Yeah.
Keep those questions coming and keep sending us those requests.
Yeah. Who knows what hidden treasures we might uncover together next?
Exactly.
Until next time, happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.